So we are now ready and to go forward with chapter on thought. And I'm gonna take the liberty to open this if I can.
Yeah.
Because this first paragraph even has been so powerful, not only for me, but for so many of my clients and especially patients in the hospital. When I was on the liaison service at the University Hospital at West Virginia University, where Judy and I were for years with the Sydney Banks Institute, I remember one carpenter who said he almost fell off of his, out of his hospital bed when he read this first paragraph. Thought is a divine tool, nothing more, nothing less, only a tool. A wise person, like a good tradesman, uses this tool to the best of his or her ability. This carpenter said, "Doctor, why didn't somebody tell me this before?"
Yeah.
But I'll go forward. The power of thought is not self-created. Thought is a divine gift which serves you immediately after you are born. Thought is the creative agent we use to direct us through life. Any thoughts? Anything anyone want to share?
Well, I have to admit something, that this is really the first time that I've actually noticed in depth the sentence, "the power of thought is not self-created," which suddenly struck me as extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, you know, the plain truth. The power of thought is not, so we're not.
So you don't remember the day that you decided to, well, I think I'm going to start thinking? You don't remember that?
But, you know, for a lot of us, you know, who depended for years on our intellect, we would find that, you know, it's easy to see why people would skip right over that. It's like,
absolutely.
because that is the difference between seeing the principles as a formless energy that's flowing through us, despite us, and thinking that the intellect is the answer.
Yes. You're kind not to be critical of my frivolity. I appreciate it.
That's okay.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I just came from a meeting with 3 different clients, and what struck me with the 3 of them is that they were almost consumed with self-hatred and like self-judgment. And I remember I used to be like that, and like seeing it and even pointing it out to them. It's like seeing how they use their thought in a way that has no meaning, you know. They just sit and they keep saying how bad they are and how they're not good, they're doing anything. And I think that is one of the best examples I can think of not using the tool of thought correctly.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. And so innocent, Ofer. So innocent. Oh, so innocent. And wow.
I think just to add to that, when you're in that frame of mind that you are pointing the finger at yourself and saying you're worthless or whatever it happens to be, most of the time you're doing that in your head, and the only person that you're having the conversation with is yourself, and it's sort of self-perpetuating and gets more and more uncomfortable and more true for yourself. But having a conversation openly with somebody else, even though you might not see where that's going, someone else might be able to point to you and go, actually, do you see how you're doing that to yourself? Just as enough to open up someone's eyes to go, or just hear it slightly differently because it's out loud rather than just in their head.
Good point.
Ofer, I really thank you for appreciating, for sharing that, because I'm sure that will be many who listen in on this that will at least hopefully give them pause to entertain the possibility that they have indeed, as we go forward, that they indeed have been doing the best they've known how to do each moment.
You know, one of the things I remember the most, actually I got from you, it was a lecture you gave in London in one of the Tikkun conference, and you gave 5 thinking patterns that do not serve us. And I remember there was self-judgment, there was worry, there was resentment, and
Guilt.
I forgot the other 2, but I think what was common with all of them is that how we use our thought. I used to call it like imagination also, like when we worry, you know, it's like we use our thought, our imagination to imagine like the worst thing that could happen, and we do it so innocently because we think it's useful, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
And I remember for me when I saw that there's no point to it, it was I don't know, world changing, you know.
Yeah.
Oh. You know, and I'm sure as we go forward, but what I've seen more clearly is that in a way, I thought of those habits that we get into, and that some are in the past, some are in the present, and some are related to the future. I mean, all there really is now. But as far as the past goes, guilt, beating ourselves up for mistakes we've made, resentment, holding on to hurt and anger, and not only guilt but shame. I think you talked about that. It's not only guilt about what we did, but then labeling ourselves as a really horrible, bad person, and resentment, holding on to hurt and anger towards people that have done things that we experienced as hurtful, and then grief, having which is in the past, of having lost people that we haven't come to peace with and accepted on life's terms. And then in the future, to me, is where worry, like you said, Ofer, it's about using our imagination of worrying about what might happen, and overanalyzing. I got to figure this out. I've got to figure this out. Is an attempt to deal with our fear of not knowing what's going to happen. And then in the present, to me, what's come to me is that there's two primarily ways that we take away our peace of mind. One is it being upset that things are not the way Billy wants them to be. Personalizing that as little Billy here, being upset that things are not going on as happening as the way I want them to be. And the other one is a sense of drivenness. I think that we are moment to moment in life either guided by this wisdom that Sid talks about so eloquently and we'll talk about more, or we're driven by our ego or our own personal mind. And as we go through and understand the principles, I think that as we understand the principles, we see psychological innocence, and that helps with guilt and resentment. And we see that we have access to wisdom beyond the intellect, which helps with worry, and overanalysis become less appealing. And as we see our spiritual nature in access to wisdom, I think that even the loss or the pain of loss, we have some sense that we do have come from a spiritual roots, and that we're returning, and even the sting of death starts to lose some of its pain, I think. Anyway, those are maybe too many thoughts at this time, but I apologize. Can always be edited out, Judy.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah. So should we go forward?
Brad, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thought is the master key that opens the world of reality to all living creatures. Thought is the missing link that gives us the power to recognize the illusionary separation between the spiritual world and the world of form. There it is.
Yeah. In case you were wondering why he called the book The Missing Link. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is
I'm
it
not
my
in
turn?
Spain. Let me
Anyone?
confused.
Pardon, Ofer?
I was kidding.
Did you? I'm sorry. You were being what?
No, I was kidding. Never mind. Bad
Oh,
joke.
okay. That's okay. Kidding is okay. So I go forward, or is there any other thoughts before we go forward?
No.
Thought on its own is a completely neutral gift. Thought is not reality, yet it is through thought that our realities are created. It is what we as humans put into our thoughts that dictates what we think of life.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You know, I live in Israel, and for me, this paragraph, this part is like, I think I can see it very clearly here, that you have like different people having different thoughts, creating different realities, and then fighting over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because everyone fears what the other person is thinking, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, if everyone could understand that the thought is not reality, then they wouldn't have to fear other people's thinking.
Right.
And there would be nothing to fight over.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be beautiful.
I love the fact that it's very clear that thought's neutral. That every single thought that appears in your consciousness is neutral until the point you start adding the color to it, depending on where your mood is at that particular moment in time. And that thought you have today in a low mood might take you in a certain direction, and exactly the same thought in half an hour's time when you're feeling better will take you in a different direction. It's when we get hold of it and start playing with that thought that it starts taking us where we decide to take it, and that is such a wonderful and hopeful thing in and of itself, in that well, if you can catch on to the fact that I'm being led astray by myself at the moment, rather than it's this thought that's making me feel the way that I am. It's actually me, how I'm painting the picture around this thought that's colouring in everything for me at the moment. That's a really lovely thing to be able to understand and remember when you manage to catch on to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun. I went to a pre-operation class for the knee surgery that I'm going to have this week, and it's a fairly simple. The replacement of the knee is a simple surgery, but the class is to explain it to everybody so they know what's going to happen. And there was this woman in the class who said, "Well, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen in this surgery?" And the nurse who was leading the class said, "Why would you want to know that?" And she said, "Well, I think you have to be prepared for everything." And the nurse gave her the best answer I've ever heard. She said, "I have no idea what the worst thing is because it hasn't happened yet."
That's a great.
I thought that was great. And she's the same one that was there when I had my last surgery 2 years ago. And she said, I was thinking of you when I said that, because I had done a training for the nurses after my surgery. They all wondered how I was so cheerful. And they had me come back and do a little training for them. And I said, it's funny, I actually read this chapter on thought to them in that training. And I said, it's so easy for us to make up worst case scenarios, and then they become our reality in that moment. And then we start looking for them. And, the way people stay cheerful is that they don't do that. They just accept the moment.
And it doesn't mean that you go through life oblivious to what might happen. I mean, but you still are guided by common sense. I suppose I maybe in 1 in 20,000 knee replacements that people die. I don't know. I mean, but do you then start focusing on, oh my gosh, 1 out of 20,000
Yeah, I
That's
could be the one.
that's much better than winning. That's better odds than winning the lottery, right? So, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it is
interesting.
true. I mean, that's what we put into our thoughts that really creates what we think in that moment, the way life is to us. You know, and
Yeah.
I was telling somebody that was talking about, well, rehab, how difficult that was going to be. And I said, you know, if you focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do, rehab is fun
Yeah.
because you keep doing more things. You know, you discover, well, 2 days ago I couldn't do this and today I can. That's
Right.
pretty cool. You know, you don't sit there and think, well, you know, before I had the surgery, I could lift my leg all the way up here. Well, you know, too bad, you'll get there.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So,
The wonderful thing about this page is that, as everybody has indicated, is that you start to get a sense of agency, don't you?
yeah.
That we do have something to do
Yes.
with our experience, and
Right.
even a glimpse of that, I think, is powerful.
Hmm.
Judy, I realized that I went out of turn and did so. Please go forward.
Okay. Among the greatest gifts given to us are the powers of free thought and free will, which give us the stamp of individuality, enabling us to see life as we wish. These same gifts can also be the greatest weaknesses of humanity. We often lack the strength to change our minds, so we get stuck in the negative thoughts and behaviors of the past. The purer your thoughts are, the more love and understanding will be in your heart. And one comment I want to make there is that when he says the purer your thoughts are, he's really not talking, this is not moral so much as it is psychological purity, that your thoughts are just neutral, as David was saying. You know, they're not, you're not contaminating them with extraneous thoughts,
Yeah,
I think.
nice point. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think to our veterans that are people struggling with pains from past experiences, it would seem like, and I just love to listen to our soldiers. Would seem that these first two paragraphs and this last one would be powerful. Is there any comments that anybody wants to make?
Look, I can say that for me, it's like Judy said, it's like what you put in your thoughts, but I don't think I'm the one who's putting stuff in my thoughts.
Yeah.
They just pop up, you know. And
Yeah.
I don't know who said that. I remember I heard it somewhere, but someone said that the highest spiritual practice you can do is to not take your thoughts seriously.
Right.
And I remember for me that was like that was also because I used to have, like, for me, ever since I was injured, so it became a possibility that people can die and that I can get injured. And I used to freak out about it. You know, I used to think about it a lot, and I used to fear that it would happen all the time. And you can't control it. It kind of like pops into your head, and then you start freaking out about it. And it still happens to me. Like, sometimes I think about something, and automatically the worst things that can happen. And to me, understanding that, okay, that's a thought. It's like, it might happen, but it's like, it's possible, but it's not probable, you know?
Yeah. And it's not happening now. That's the key, except in your own head.
That was like seeing it again and again and again and again and again. It became an understanding that that's not reality, even though, like, it feels like reality. So that was a big game changer as well.
That's really powerful.
That's a powerful point, Ofer, that these thoughts, sometimes they come in. And I remember, Judy, one of the clients that you had, sometimes they're not individual horses that come by, they're herds of buffalo. And that they come in massive herds sometimes, and that can seem pretty overwhelming unless one has at least starts to have the understanding that you speak of. Anyway, that's what came to me, that it's so easy to say, well, it's what we put into it, but it's not like, you know, when you're overrun by a crowd of and you feel like you're being trampled. It takes some real understanding to know that you're going to be okay and that you are okay. I guess I'm not speaking at it very well, and maybe those of you others can what Ofer said really touched me. It touched me.
It is true, because you know, these thoughts do pop up without any control, and certainly if you know, some of the guys that I've been speaking to, it happens quite regularly, and the way I try and explain it to them is that they should see those, you know, those thoughts are there, you know, they're popping up potentially for a reason, and that might be just almost like a false fire alarm going off. You know, the alarm is there for a reason. It just happens to have gone off at the wrong time. So just quickly check, are you okay at the moment? And if you are, and the people around you are okay, and it's just now just a noise in the background going off that you can't quite turn off at the moment, but it's done the right thing. It's trying to make sure that you're safe. And once you've worked out that you are, then just try and calm down a little bit, but know that actually nothing bad is going to happen right now, right in this moment, and almost thank it for showing up, because it is, you know, the reason these things come back to us is to try and help keep us alive, because, you know, people have been put through some fairly unpleasant experiences, and we learn from those, and unfortunately sometimes they show up in quite a visceral, unpleasant way in our minds, but that the way it shows up at that moment is it's an alarm, and if there's no reason for the alarm to be going off, then you can just take that 2 seconds to chill a little bit and to see where that goes for you. But you don't actually need to do anything to turn it off. It will go eventually on its own.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's important to know that you don't have to do anything. I had a veteran that told me one time that was getting to be 4th of July, and he was going to check himself into a program, even though he didn't really need to check himself into a hospital, so that he wouldn't be exposed to fireworks and all the noise, the random noise that happens around the 4th of July, not just in the planned areas, but in neighborhoods now. People pop off fireworks all over the place. And one of the other guys in the group said, you know, gee, that sounds terrible. You know, like, why would you want to be in a horrible hospital, you know, just because it's the 4th of July? You're giving away your power, you know, like you can't do anything about this. And he said, yeah, but those are the thoughts that trigger me and all this kind of stuff. And one of the other guys said, well, I have an idea. Let's go camping in the Mayaca State Park, which there's no way you're going to hear fireworks. Nobody lived in Florida would say that. If you went into Mayaca State Park, you're in the swampy wilderness and you don't hear anything except the cicadas and the splash of the alligators. And he said, oh, I never thought of that. There'd be something positive I could do. And that's another example of, you know, that sometimes to try to escape those thoughts, people will do desperate things, you know, and they don't need to. They're simple things that they could do if they really feel like they don't trust themselves yet in the presence of triggers. But I thought it was sweet that they kind of took care of each other. And they did. The guys went camping. They took their kids. They both had sons. And they took their kids camping, had a wonderful time. And it certainly beat being in the mental hospital, you know. So anyway, small thing.
No, it's not a small thing, at least to me, Judy. That to me, one of the themes to me is that what we call universal mind is that spiritual guide is always trying to help us at the level of understanding that we're at right now.
Right.
At the level of understanding that we're right now.
Right.
Is trying to help us have a gentler life. As you said that, I remember that we lived about 370 miles from my mom's twin sister up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, from Galesburg, Illinois. And we used to go up there routinely over the 4th of July weekend to visit them. And the neighbor next door, we're talking about, I was 10 years old, or 8 to 10 years, we're talking about 1950, which is what, 5 years after World War II had ended.
Mhm.
And their neighbor right next door had been a combat infantry soldier, and they left. They were never around over the 4th of July because they went to the country.
Uh-huh.
They went to the country they had relatives or someone in the country, so he would not have to experience the fireworks of the 4th of July. And I think even now in retrospect, I see the wisdom that at that place where he was right now with his thoughts and memories, and got triggered by that. What a wonderful thing for wisdom to guide him to that simple thing of going to the country or going to the woods, as you said. So I think that's to me been a real lesson as we go forward, that whatever level we're at, if we listen, we will be guided to the most gentle answer that we can have right now until we see more, So,
You know, something comes to my mind. I want to like combine like what Judy said and what Dave said. For me, like every 4th of it's not 4th of July, we call it Independence Day. I actually go with my friends and we go do camping for the same reason. But something happened to me like 2 months ago. I was in Barcelona, and I landed in the middle of it's called Fiesta de Gracia. It's like a big fiesta with, I've never seen so much fireworks. And I was in the middle of it. And there's like, it was coming all over, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember I was like freaking out. I'm like surrounded with noise, horrible noise. And I started sweating. And you know what Dave said? He said, and you know, for me it was like, okay, I'm going to run home or I'm going to shout at someone, I don't know. And it's like Dave said, I just decided to not do nothing. I just did nothing. I just sat there. And I became silent, you know, and it took me like 5 minutes that I was sweating a lot and my heart was pounding. But suddenly something happened. My level of consciousness was raised, and suddenly my fear went away.
Wow.
And it was it changed into happiness because suddenly the same noise that freaked me out it became I had a different interpretation for it. And that was amazing because it was exactly the same experience, and it was exactly the same arousal I had in my body. My body was aroused and, you know, and vigilant, or whatever you call it. But my thought changed. At that moment, my thought changed, and instead of being scared and fearful, I was like happy and wow, I'm in the middle of the biggest celebration ever. And I didn't have to do nothing. I just had to sit there and just wait. Just let the fear, the thought go away. And that was a big lesson for me.
Wow.
That's so cool.
Wow.
That takes your breath away, Ofer. That you had the courage and the awareness to look in a different direction because our impetus is to do something, isn't it?
You want to run away, but
To do something, yes. Yeah. Wow. Brad, did you have something that you wanted to add, Brad, or just?
No, I think it's just beautiful. I mean, when you were talking about that, Ofer, I just was really remembering my own circumstances where I responded instinctively with that when I needed to get away. And now that I'm more and more with this understanding, I find myself, there's a gap between the experience and my consciousness. And now there's a space to do something different. And that's what to me is so hopeful, is not in that space. There's freedom. I can feel the freedom even for just a second.
Yeah.
And I can go in a different direction, and it's happening, you know, more and more. And I still get caught up a lot of times with that, and especially in the supermarket, with a lot of people in line waiting. I know that I go to that place, but I'm also just now just seeing this understanding. I just look back toward it, and it creates that gap. And I hear that gap came for you, and you had a completely different experience, even though the whole body thing was right there, really in full flight and survival. It's powerful.
Wow. Yeah. I'm reminded of two things. One of the quote of that is quoted to Sid, and I don't know where it's from, whether it's from an old tape where he said, if we could just not be frightened by our experience,
Yeah.
everything would change. And the other thought that came was Viktor Frankl's famous quote of saying that there is a space between the stimulus and the response. I heard that as you talked, Brad, and as Ofer did. There's a space between the stimulus and the response, and it is in that space that our freedom lies.
Mm-hmm. That's what they're saying. Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
That's what he was
And
pointing to.
I think that as people have a glimpse of these three principles, that space seems to get bigger
Mm-hmm.
and more accessible to people. And the first thing is even to know that it's there.
Yeah.
I went through most of my life not knowing that there was such a space. So the first thing is the recognition that indeed there is that space.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is to know which direction to look. I mean, Ofer, here your whole body is in this state, and yet you knew to not
Go to
be as quiet as possible. Yeah. I would hope that for those that listen to this, that would awaken, again, using the metaphor, a few more photons of hope and of light, that there is indeed hope even in the midst of severe pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that this is about 25 minutes on this part, and I'm thinking that it might be a good place to stop and continue on page 51 when we come back to this at our next session.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay with people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds
Yeah.
great.
That makes sense. We can just
feel,
bookmark page 51.
yeah. I'm deeply grateful that every one of you, and Ofer, I'm so glad that you
Yeah.
joined us, and what a beautiful, and to share that with us. I'm just deeply grateful. Yeah. Anybody have any thoughts that they'd like to share before we go?
Just to say I love you guys.
Yeah. I was going to say we love you too. I really love being on these calls, and I feel very privileged and fortunate that I am part of it. And I'm very grateful for the learning that you all share, because every time somebody speaks, I go, oh, that is so true. You know, it really is touching, and it's helped me a lot in my work to be part of these calls. So I thank you.